I've watched a lot of Prime Minister's questions in my time in the chamber and outside of it. And the weird thing about the sort of Starmer-Badenoch years, if it ends up running to years, which after performances like that I think becomes less and less likely, is, Natasha, I think it's almost as if it's this sort of slightly weird dance where they both just, instead of actually even, I mean, insofar as Prime Minister's questions is ever a debate about policy or even politics, it becomes very formalistic. They basically spend it accusing each other of not being entirely up to date or not understanding whatever it is that they're talking about, which more than anything makes it seem more futile than ever and very, very boring.
Yeah, and usually Keir Starmer could be accused of not answering the questions from Kemi Badenoch properly, but I think this time she probably couldn't say that, but decided to go ahead on her script anyway of, well, you're not answering the question, and him saying, you're not listening to my answers. It just feels like they're actually having two separate Prime Minister's questions sessions, doesn't
You
it?
haven't done your homework. No, you haven't done your homework.
No, you're not listening. No, you're not answering. No, you're not listening. And it just feels a little bit tedious. But I think this session, more than anything, showed to me that Keir Starmer is preparing incredibly well for Prime Minister's questions. He had an answer for absolutely everything that she threw at him, whether it was the Attorney General. He threw back, you served with Suella Braverman, who of course had to resign when she was Attorney General over those security email that she used her own personal email and was accused of security breaches, whether it's about the Finland, the government's preferred case of the new borders chief who's working from Finland, Keir Starmer throwing it back. Well, actually, it was under you guys that you signed off his appointment, and he's been working in Finland for 5 years. I'm taking him back to the UK. Or whether it was on this case that she led on that's been leading the papers today about this family from Gaza who have been allowed to settle under the Ukraine scheme. And he has said that he will be changing the law to stop that from happening. He had an answer for absolutely everything and just kept hitting it back again and again and again. She could not land a single blow this week.
I mean, look, Prime Minister's questions, being leader of the opposition is tough. It's not easy. You've got the kind of, all the government benches against you. The Prime Minister has the last word. But as William Hague said about his time as leader of the opposition, Prime Minister's questions is actually one of the only things you've kind of got to do. I mean, it's actually one of the only constitutional roles you have. You've got a lot of time on your hands. You don't have to govern anything. You've got a lot of time to prepare for it in a way the Prime Minister doesn't. And it feels to me, we've seen enough of this. I don't know what you think, but it feels to me now as if we've kind of seen enough of this stuff that it's almost, for Badenoch, a bit of a parable of her being leader of the opposition overall, which is, it feels like she hasn't even really begun to articulate yet what is her primary critique of Starmer. What is the thing that she thinks is going to have most resonance? Because what she seems to tend to do is every week veer from subject to subject, from point of critique to point of critique, without really alighting upon anything in particular, apart from this very odd thing about the idea of his being ill-prepared. But one thing that you probably can't say about Starmer is that he might not be the most exciting person in the world, but he doesn't give off the vibes of being ill-prepared in a way that, say, someone like Boris Johnson might have done.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the one critique of him usually is that he doesn't answer the question. Today he was absolutely...
Or that he flip-flops, or that he's sort of all over the place.
There's no narrative to her. Her topic selection, I think, is generally very good. And I think, apart from migration, which I don't understand why she continued... Well, we do understand why she continues to go on migration, is because her party, the Reform Party, continued to pressure her on that, and she feels like she has to address that. It's the one policy topic that we know that she's actually set a policy on migration, that she's not set out any other policies. But she goes on topics, and I think generally they're not bad topics. She goes on the economy, she goes on the farming tax, she goes on Chagos, she goes on lots of things which she thinks that the Prime Minister is weak on. I think that's a good tactic, but she doesn't have an overarching strategy of narrative, of ideology, of what she's standing for, of what the Prime Minister is not standing for, to tie it all together. And you see little hints of it that come out sometimes, where she says things like, under Keir Starmer, they're negotiating, but it's not working, and things like that. But she needs to get, I think, a bit better at conveying what she's trying to actually say about the Prime Minister and about the government. And I don't think she's quite managed to knit all of that together yet.
I mean, the migration stuff from the Tories is, I found astounding.
It's baffling. It's just not...
I think it is baffling because although, I can see, as you say, obviously they've got political pressure to their right that they have to try and deal with. But the problem they've got is it's even more problematic for them than it is for Labour. Because, I mean, I've done it on the Sunday show, lots of other people will do it. Of course, the obvious rejoinder each time is they say the government isn't getting a grip on migration. Obviously. Yeah. Obviously, the rejoinder is, well, hang on a minute. You had 14 years and it reached higher levels than ever before. And you know what their response to that is? And this is the bit that I find baffling. Their response to that is, we made a mistake. Made a mistake? What, you leave your bag on the train. You know, that makes it sound almost accidental. Or whoops, we've got
we made a mistake and left the door open for a long time.
We've got whoops, we've got net migration at 700,000. Whoops, that was a mistake. Like, instead of doing actually what would be honest, which would be to say, well, look, actually, if you go back and you actually look at the situation at the time, we had COVID, we had inflation, we had a labour problem, we had Ukrainians coming in, we had Hong Kongers coming, you know, and actually say, we didn't make a mistake, it was just, I don't think Keir Starmer would have made any different decisions at the time. We stick by our decision. At least, but now we have to get it down. At least that would make sense. But what they're basically just saying is they basically just took completely of their senses, which doesn't say much about the judgment for a political leader.
It doesn't work. And, you know, Keir Starmer's argument, you know, he said this just a few minutes ago, same old Tories, open borders, empty promises. And that's exactly what people, I think, out there think about the Conservative Party at the moment. And the reason why they're not doing any better in the polls under Kemi Badenoch is because they just don't believe her. She has not managed to repair any of the trust that was lost over the last 14 years of this government slowly. And obviously, you know, the horrible election result that they had last year, they still don't believe in her enough at all. They don't believe her. They don't trust her. They don't trust that she's actually going to do anything that she says, which is, you know, the reason why the Tories say they've not put forward any policies, because they believe there's no point, because the party, the country doesn't actually trust them at the moment. But yeah, the idea of going in on migration, of course, it's something to hammer the government on, but I just don't think it works when the Tories have left such a horrible record on it.
And we see there was I don't know if you saw this, there was a piece in the Telegraph overnight, late evening yesterday, talking about Badenoch's approach to the media, which is, you know, might sound trivial, but actually, when you're leader of the opposition, it's basically nearly everything that you do, right? Or the thing that really sort of matters.
And this is her only chance once a week to get in front of us. Right?
Exactly, completely. So this is her chance to kind of make an impression that way. But apparently, her office is saying that, you know, they want to mirror, because she doesn't like doing the media. She finds media, you know, irritating and tedious, and journalists irritating and tedious, and there might just be something in that, but it is it's like complaining about the weather if you're a politician. But she's apparently saying, her office is saying, that she wants to kind of emulate Trump in sort of doing kind of right-wing media podcasts, sort of appearing in non-traditional media spaces, because they think that's where she'll be at her best, when she can kind of talk at length, communicate her vision and so on. What do you make of that as a strategy in Britain?
I mean, it got her a very nice write-up after she did the Daily Telegraph
Weird
podcast.
That, isn't it?
Funny that.
Weird that.
But look, sometimes...
Shame no one listens.
Oh.
No, it's a joke. Sorry.
Sorry. Look, it depends who she's trying to reach out to. Is she trying to... And I still don't think Kemi Badenoch knows who she's trying to reach out to. Is she trying to win back those disaffected Tory voters? Is she trying to stop people from going to Reform? Or is she trying to win back Labour voters who, you know, are disaffected with voting Labour? I don't think she quite knows that at the moment. I don't think there's a strategy in place. She, at the moment, talks a lot about her ideology, about her values, and she keeps harking back to that speech where she launched her leadership speech, where she was talking about the values she wanted the Conservative Party to emulate. But I still don't know exactly which group she's targeting. But I talked to people in the Labour Party, they knew exactly who they are targeting for the next election already. And I saw some internal slides that have been sent around in number 10 about the exact groups that they're looking at. And they are not too worried about, I mean, despite, you know, Morgan McSweeney and the Reform idea that he's very concerned about that, those are not the people that they are worried that are going to slip back into Conservative voters. And they're more worried about shoring up votes from the other side of the political spectrum, worried about bleeding votes to the Lib Dems and the Greens. I don't think the Conservatives know exactly who they're targeting.
No, it's funny, isn't it? What do you think of this argument? We're hearing it more and more in the kind of sort of the right-wing media space. We heard Badenoch talk about it there. She is a sort of terminally online kind of politician.
Saying that, she doesn't use a lot of social media.
No, that's true. But I get the impression she reads a lot of it, but she doesn't do a lot of it, which I think is the kind of worst of all worlds, actually. But she's mentioned Lord Hermer, the Attorney General there, something, again, getting quite a lot of traction. Do you think that there's anything in that? Do you think there's much mileage in the attacks on Lord Hermer? Maybe just explain to people kind of why it is that people are going through.
So, yeah, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, clearly getting a lot of criticism at the moment. There are clearly people in the Cabinet that are unhappy with the way that he is doing things. He's a close ally of Keir Starmer.
Old friend,
the bar. Donor, lawyer. And they are clearly sort of two sides of the same coin. There's a lot of criticism that he in government is holding the government to a higher standard of strictness around the law, and that's hampering government decisions, according to a lot of people who have been briefing newspapers and other reports.
The knives are out for him, aren't they?
It's really, really so. Yeah. But he, I think, has been pretty forthright in coming forward to back him, although he didn't say anything about him today. I believe he just sort of deflected and started talking about something else.
Slightly uncomfortable.
It is slightly uncomfortable for him, and I think if it'll get passed off of just the nitty gritty day to day of Westminster politics for us, for politicos that are not inside of it, and go, who on earth is the Attorney General and what does he do? But
it's a big important job, though.
It's a big job. It has a big impact on decisions that go on internally in government and the direction of travel. But a lot of the criticism of Keir Starmer from Boris Johnson's government was that he did not believe in the rule of law enough. He did not push forward enough of what was considered to be the right rule of law and respect for international institutions. And that's when Keir Starmer is obviously going to come up against some trouble, because this ECHR case that Kemi Badenoch mentioned today usually would be the kind of thing where Keir Starmer would stand up and say, we have to obey by the rule of law. But actually, you get into government, you realise these cases, these lawyers, these tribunals are not quite straightforward. People don't all see the law in the same way. And people like Lord Homer are getting criticised for being too strict on it. Equally, these immigration judges that have signed off this Gaza case, again, Keir Starmer is saying, well, actually, it's the opposite. I think there's a loophole in the law here and I'm going to crack down on it.
And we are still waiting. We talked about it before we went to Prime Minister's questions. We are still waiting for this Trump visit, aren't we? I mean, if it goes on too much longer, there will be... I mean, to be fair, I don't think he's not received any European leaders yet.
No, we've had the King of Jordan and we've had the Israeli Prime Minister. It's not like President Macron's been over and they've been a bit all buddy-buddying, which I don't think was going to happen anyway, because Keir Starmer not a fan of many European leaders, one may say. But yes, I think there are still a little bit of tentative thoughts in Downing Street and in Washington that this visit is going to go forward at some point in the next couple of weeks, but they are still trying to nail down a date.
But it is a moment of... I mean, it's peril if it doesn't happen, but it'll be a moment of political peril when it does happen, because, of course, you just can never, unlike, visiting Biden or anyone else, she basically runs like clockwork. You know exactly what's going to happen, what's going to be said. Who knows? Musk could be there. You could be surprised to see Elon coming into the Oval Office and, coming with his child. We're going to be talking about that shortly. But, it is actually a moment of unpredictability.
It is, but I think while the steel tariffs are up in the air, perhaps it's not the right time to have this visit anyway. I think, Keir Starmer would like to see that decision get out of the way first. However, it could be the fact that it could give Keir Starmer the opportunity to press him in person about why he doesn't believe that that's going to happen. In that case, Downing Street should get on with it and try and secure a date in the diary for that ASAP. Obviously, Peter Mandelson starting his job as our man in Washington this week. I'm sure we'll be pressing him hard. The government still, for what it's worth, Lewis, not taking the threat of tariffs. Davey tried to raise this today, saying that they should slap retaliatory tariffs on the Trump administration if they do it to us. The government here staying completely stum. Apparently they're still weighing it up, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Well, also, according to Ed Davey, the people of the Ruhr Valley will be surprised to hear that Allied troops crossed over 7 years ago, back in 8 years ago, back in 2017. So, hey, it's all different in Lib Dem land. Yeah.